Imagine that you're an individual that lives alone in an apartment, no friends, no family, no money. But then one day, while you're checking your mailbox, you find a strange looking letter between all of your bills, and it tells you to go back to your room. On the TV, there's a Pokemon League Championship finale playing, and as the two Pokemon are fighting, smoke rises from the battle, as everybody's wondering who's going to be the winner. It's the all-time champion, Alatus, but the broadcast gets interrupted by a news report. We're told to be on the lookout for a group of strange individuals that are stealing fossils from caves. They have not been identified yet, but there have been other crimes recently in the region, so everybody's wondering if the two are connected. We turn off the TV, and a strange device with a hologram pops up, and the guy with cyan hair starts speaking to us. He says that we need to stop believing all the lies that the Pokemon region of Fabel is beautiful and flawless, because he knows that people like me haven't had an easy life. That's why their organization, Team Cipher, takes people like me in to work for them and complete a ton of cool missions that may or may not be illegal. So Calais here is an admin of Team Cipher, and he's going to make sure that we get into the organization without any problems. In their ranks, they mainly use Steel, Electric, and Psychic type Pokemon, so in this run, I'll also only be using those three types, so I can try to become the best grunt this organization has ever laid eyes on. No matter what your goal is by joining Team Cipher, the entire organization drives with just one purpose: try to get enough power to rule this whole corrupted region and steer it back to glory. We tell Calais that our name is Zwiggojr, and with that we get thrown into a world of crime where being under the law is our first priority. Once we reach our headquarters, we're standing in line with all of the other rookie grunts. Right now we're the lowest rank possible, but if we do our best and complete enough missions, we might get the chance to be promoted. That is, if we manage to survive this cruel world. But we get something that'll help us out big time with that: a starter Pokemon. They said they specialize in 3 typings, so our choices are between Klink, Magnemite, and Bronzor. I went with Klink because the cogs in my head have to start turning if I want to make it in this place. We start walking around the hideout before we get our objective and find a Cipher phone. And we're starting off crooked already because we steal this thing and find out that you can see your current mission objectives on it. We don't have our assignment yet, so we check out the base some more and see that we actually have some policemen locked up in our cells. Oh, how the turntables, baby. We also run into a science division, and honestly, I don't really want to know what kind of experiments they do here. A shop where you can buy all kinds of stolen goods, and an arena where we have our first Pokemon battle against a fellow grunt, and after we beat up his Rattata, we have already completed our training. But first, a word to the sponsor of this video, AFKJourney, a free-to-play ethereal fantasy RPG game that is nothing like other idling games. It's got some very gorgeous visuals and pretty deep gameplay mechanics as well. It's now available on iOS, Google Store for mobile, and on the AFKJourney official website for PC. And if you're playing on PC, it will look even better and will have compatible side-scrolling elements too. And if you take a quick look at AFK's Journey's world, you will see a beautiful magic land that breathes with life. You'll need to go on a fantasy quest as Merlin, while collecting as many heroes as possible to formulate a winning tactics against other enemies. And most of these heroes look pretty cool and have some very neat abilities if you ask me. And while in Pokemon they only give you one map to explore, this game actually gives you diverse big maps where you can solve fun puzzles and meet interesting NPCs, all while doing it with minimal effort, so you can maybe watch your favorite show in the background. With AFK Journey's official release, players can get all of these heroes for free. And additionally, if you participate in events with a 7-day login period, you can receive 200 plus free pulls as well. And if all of this still doesn't convince you, AFK Journey also has a unique and interesting character customization system offering multiple image combinations for the protagonist. And on top of all this, you can also use my CDKey AFKJourney88 in the description to redeem it and get 100 diamonds, 18,888 golden coins. So what are you waiting for? Go and download AFK Journey from the link in the description right now. And of course, a huge thank you to them for sponsoring this video. So we go back upstairs and talk to Calais for our mission debrief. He's happy to see that we won our battle because they really need people that can stand up for themselves around here. So there's this cave somewhere around here where there's rumored to be fossils. If they contain strong Pokemon, we might be able to subtract them and get some real powerhouses for our team. So they're sending a platoon of grunts, including me, to go and check it out. He hands me some Pokeballs in case I want to strengthen up my team a bit, and applauds me for already stealing a Cipher phone because he was about to actually give me one. So we take the elevator upstairs and see that the rest of our HQ is actually just a normal workplace, which is just a company that basically does nothing to hide our presence downstairs. And if you come up here, don't go down these stairs because they'll crash your game. While running around town, we find a guy that's into making money, and considering that we're a crook ourselves, we'd love some of that as well. So he hands me an amulet coin, which is going to make us absolute stonks. And after our sidetracking journey is done, we finally make it to the cave and meet up with our fellow grunts who actually don't want to help us at all, as they want to get the fossils for themselves because that might net them a promotion. Inside this cave, however, we get our second and third team members, Grubbin and Joltik. But then we get a distress call from some of the grunts. There's a very strong hiker around that's guarding a very valuable item, and they think that it might be the fossils that we're after. Unfortunately, all the grunts have been taken out by this guy, and we're the only thing we have left. So we do what we do best, to beat up his Machop and Sandshrew and scare him away with some criminal threats. After all this effort, it just turned out to be a useless leaf stone. So we regroup with the squad and split up into teams so that we can find those fossils faster. But our luck strikes again as we run into a scientist who's working for us, who already rounded up the fossils and is ready to take them to the hideout. One of our fellow grunts is incredibly disappointed that he didn't find them first, but he's going to get some help to get these moved. We're told to wait here with the scientist, but it gets incredibly awkward, so we go around the corner because nothing should really be happening to the fossils at this point, and that's when a blonde-haired kid shows up and totally takes me out with just his level 23 Combuskin. His name is Kian, and once he goes around the corner, we hear the scientist screaming,
"No, please don't steal these fossils!"
But it's already too late, and once the other grunts arrive, we have to explain to them that a 10-year-old kid foiled our plans. They tell me to go back to HQ and explain everything to the boss because this is not their fault, it's mine. Calais is extremely angry at me until I mention that this kid had a Combuskin. That's when his mood switches and tells me that I can go and tell this story to the big boss. I take the elevator to the 4th floor and Verlo calls me in. He is a tad displeased with the failure of our mission, but our job as a grunt can still be saved if we tell him everything we know about that trainer. Once our explanation is done, he realizes that this might be the work of the regional professor, because you see, Pokemon like Combuskin are not available in this region. You have to get them via a starter option in Professor Larch's lab. You see, this professor messed with this organization once in the past, and now he sent out a new Pokemon trainer, most likely to get to them. But enough about that, because a member of the Neo Team Galactics walks in. His name is Charon, and supposedly he needs an escort to try and escort some of his members to an unknown location. So the boss decides to put me on this mission since I've already proven myself by battling that kid. We have a partnership with them currently because it's always nice to have some co-workers that are having a different goal than you, and we don't want an all-out war between our two teams, so we try to keep it as friendly as possible. I'll have to go south to Atimo Town where we have to meet up with some of the Galactic Grunts, and once we arrive there, we kind of get disrespected by the Grunt, as they would have expected somebody with more experience, but he just tells me to come to the warehouse for a briefing. But first we have a very important mission: steal some candy from a little girl. Yep, I'm that kind of grunt. I also tried taking on the gym challenge, but unfortunately, because we're not a registered trainer, we can't do that. So we head over to the warehouse instead, and there the Team Galactic Grunts brief me on their mission. Basically, the owner of this warehouse is in possession of a bracelet, and they're trying to get their hands on it, but in order to get through the security here, they need me to go and steal a cop's uniform and ID so that I can disable it. Their idea is for me to head over to a mountaintop nearby, then they call the police on me, and because only one cop is probably going to show up and be alone, I can then overpower him and steal all his stuff. But first, we break into a real cop's house and almost get arrested. So we make our ass out of there, go to the nearby cave, catch a Varoom there, and head to the top of the mountain. Catch the unknowing police officer off guard, and unfortunately have to take care of his doggos, even though I'd rather be petting them right now. After we knock him unconscious, we find out that the clothes are way too big for me, so we just steal his ID instead. We go back to the Galactic Grunts, but they tell me that one of their guys got arrested by the police. So with our new ID, we have to go to the police station, try to break in, and get him out. out. And while we're in there, we might as well deactivate the security system of this place. Somehow, the police guy behind the counter doesn't question my outfit and thinks we're actually his colleague Mark. Unfortunately, the police officers inside don't believe I'm Mark because they actually know what I look like. But once we defeat them, we get our galactic friend out so they can join back up with his brethren while we go to the main computer, shut down the cameras, and read up about some info on 3 different teams: Team Neo Galactic, Team Trouble, and an unnamed team, which is actually us. It's really good that the police doesn't have a lot of information on us already, but unfortunately we can't erase these files because we'll need admin access. So we leave the police station and barge back into the warehouse together with the galactic grunts as we take out all of the employees until we reach the director. He isn't going down easy though, as he destroys most of the grunts that were with me, which means I'm the last one standing. So if we lose here, our mission is a failure. He actually had a pretty decent team of Lillipup, Nidorino, and Chatot, but considering I have a Clink, which none of those Pokemon are good against, I was able to just gear grind through them. Gear grind, if you don't know, is a really overpowered attack with 50 base power, always hits 2 times, and this early in the game, it's shredding through almost everything. We snag the manager's necklace, but the director says that we will regret this because he will send his son after us, and eventually we might even end up behind bars. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about that because the mission was a success, and on our way back to the base, we evolved our Grubbin into Charjabug. Then we went to report to the boss, and he could not be happier. He got a call from Team Neo Galactic that we completed our mission as well, but he wants to hear it from me instead. After telling him that we basically did all the work, and while that might be frustrating, we did manage to break into a police station and get some valuable information from them. He congratulates me on my mission once again and is going to think of a way to surprise me next time. But for now, our objective is going to be find some more powerful Pokemon so our organization can become more well known so that we can eventually maybe even take down the Elite Four and Champion. And our boss's intelligence can help with that because they have heard word that Cobalion, the legendary Pokemon, is being transported to a nearby gym in Matu City. So he tells me to go and meet up with the grunts there because they have already got a station of operation as well, and they will tell me what our mission coordinates are going to be exactly. The road there was pretty easy, and after arriving we find the biggest Pokemon center you've ever seen. It's like I'm in New York all over again. And speaking of America, we can't go into a big city without doing some gambling at the local casino. Once we're millions of dollars in debt, we finally leave, but not after saying goodbye to this random Team Rocket grunt. We go to the local department store, and believe me, I will never ever buy something from here because I'm a crook. I'd rather steal it or spend it on my own organization. Unfortunately, robbing the place is not an option, so let's head over to my colleagues. They brief me on the mission and say that I need to break into a random warehouse somewhere nearby to steal all of their information about where Cobalion is going to be and at what time, so that we can go and capture it. So we pick up the pen drive from another grunt and go to the warehouse where we can store all of the information on it. Entering wasn't too hard because of my police badge that I still have, but once we're inside, the people know that we're not supposed to be here as they recognize my outfit from being an evil team once. I thought we were just going to get this information easily, but we need 6 access codes that are spread throughout this warehouse. So after battling like 100 trainers, we finally pick all of them up and get into the back rooms. There's a random computer nerd in here who doesn't want me taking his precious information, and he isn't just going to let me hack into his system. On the contrary, he thinks he might get a promotion if he manages to lock me up in that cage over there. And considering that his team only has 3 Pokemon and is literal trash, he's going to be the one that's locked up in this cage. We download all the data we need and report back to our colleagues. We now know the exact time and location Cobalion is going to be at the gym, but unfortunately it's a 7th or 8th gym, so we can't take the trainers on there. They're going to be way too strong. So we'll have to devise a plan to take them out of the game, and we're going to do that with Team A, which is planted in an apartment block not too far from here. So we join up with them and meet up with the leader here, which is Lieutenant Chizome. After doing some introductions, he tells me to go and chill out while they cook up a plan. Personally, I cook myself some nice dinner, but eventually I get called over again, and our lieutenant says that we'll be split up in groups of 2, and I'll be with the famous footballer Di Maria. She started at Cipher around the same time I did, so I bet we'll get along great. Maybe eventually we'll even be able to ask if we can hold the World Cup. Our objective is to get a gym pass from one of the trainers, because otherwise we can't enter. And we have some info about a trainer that's out on a stroll without his Pokemon right now, so we have to go and ambush him. So we go to the forest together and battle through all kinds of wild Pokemon, while talking about our childhood traumas, because you know, that's just something you do on your first date with a colleague. Maria's story basically boils down to her not having any parents or any money, and that's basically the reason as to why she had to join up with Team Cipher. Once we're all talked out, we stumble upon a pond where this gym trainer is just enjoying his day off. And even though I feel bad for ruining his day, we still have to ambush him. He only has 2 pet Pokemon with him, which are Swalot and Stunky, so me and Maria take care of them pretty quickly and grab his access card. On our way back to the apartment, we capture one more team member in Plusle and name it Math, which I'm honestly not too good at, because my bank account is basically 0, so I never see any numbers. With my fried brain, we eventually end up back at the lieutenant, and he's very happy to see that we succeeded in our mission, but we have one more thing to do before we can storm the gym, and that's turn off the alarm so the cops won't catch on. And our plan for that is to infiltrate the nearby power plant and somehow turn off the power of the gym from there. And guess which grunt is going to have to go in and do it all by himself? That's right, this guy. So we go get a hard drive with a virus on it so we can install that at the power plant. And once we get in there with our police badge, we enter the ventilation system to go around the power plant unnoticed. But we end up falling through a hole in the ventilation shaft and end up in this old guy's hideout that seems to be a little abandoned. There's broken plants and books lying everywhere. This place hasn't been maintained in a while. And this place seems to be very well guarded too, with lasers and Pokemon around every corner. By the way, we actually did capture a Magnemite in here, which is very nice, as well as an LGM. But that's not the only security system here. There's these spinning tiles and quizzes that you need to solve as well, and if you get one of the quizzes wrong, you get attacked by robotic figures that kind of look like human beings. They look like they were made a very long time ago, and it doesn't seem like they were made for the good of the people. We chase this old man around as well, and he lets us run into even more traps, and after finding some of his very concerning research notes, we end up driving him into a corner. We confront him, and he says that he hasn't been visited by a human in over 10 years. But that logo on my chest, he recognizes it. He knows that Team Cipher, back in his day at least, was just a little gang of goons, and now we've grown to an operation that has over 100 members. He himself was the young gym leader, the electric type expert, Takami, but now he's been forgotten by the outside world because they have some poison type punk who took his place, which is also the leader of the gym we're about to attack. But he isn't going to tell me anything else unless we prove our strength, otherwise we're going to disappear forever. He however only had 3 Pokemon and they weren't even fully evolved, so I have no idea what he's been doing down here for 10 years, but training wasn't one of those things. Aluxio, Fluffy, and Magneton. They all fell to the power of my steel and psychic types, and once he witnessed my strength, he was ready to hand over all the information he had. He even starts calling me by my real name instead of just Cipher Grunt to show me some respect. He then starts to tell the story from the beginning. You see, he used to be a scientist and a damn good one at that, and besides that, he was obviously the gym leader of this town. And one day the champion came to him with some kind of project because he wanted him to lead it. If he would accept, his gym would get additional funds, so of course he didn't even hesitate. He goes on to explain that Pokemon can be used for battle, but rarely they use the power to their full extent. And that's what they were trying to accomplish with this experiment. And you see the weird machine looking things we fought earlier? That is the outcome of those experiments. They used to combine, or at least try to combine, Pokemon with human beings. They used to get test subjects here all the time, and with the money they promised, they were able to turn them into these Pokemon human-like creatures. And in the end, they of course never saw the money. In the end, the project was deemed a failure because all of the test subjects lost their sanity after the process. And so they stopped funding it and nobody could ever speak of it again. He heard of some of his colleagues disappearing, that's why he locked himself up down here so he wouldn't get killed. And he managed to survive by letting his Pokemon fetch food for him and return it back here. And that's basically his story. He then asks me what I'm doing here, so we explain our entire power plan and gym plan, and he thinks he can actually help us. You see, it wouldn't work with just a regular virus. He, however, can actually control this power plant at will, or at least some parts of it. And he's considering helping out our cause because, honestly, he just wants to fight back at that corrupt government that made him do all of those experiments in the first place. place. So we follow him to the service room, and from here he can control anything in the city. All we have to do is call him on his Takami beeper and give him the signal to turn off the power in the gym. We head back to the lieutenant to report all of our findings, and he is absolutely pleased with what we did. We'll once again be splitting up in teams, but we won't just enter the gym from the front door. No, we'll be going into the storage room. Di Maria will be joining us as well, but unfortunately she won't be fighting alongside us. But we're basically ready to go and charge in, so we head to the gym, I give the signal, and we enter. Of course, the gym lights are out, which means it's hard to see, but the lieutenant has a flashlight, which basically just works as the flash HM so we can see stuff. Night vision goggles would have been way cooler, to be honest, but hey, I'm not complaining. Because Cobalion is still guarded very heavily, some police officers are in the gym as well. But once you take care of those, it's basically a free ride to the end. That is, until we run into Di Maria and a fellow grunt who says that we need 5 keys in order to open the reinforced door that Cobalion is behind. So we decide to split up in teams of 2. Di Maria goes and gets 3 keys while I go and get the other 2. After doing that, we meet up again and combine them to open up the final door. At least that's what we thought, but the door wouldn't open, so we searched around and found a scientist who could open the door with a remote key on his phone. He wasn't giving in easy though, so we had to show him that we're not messing around and made him open it by force. Now it's finally time for us to enter, but it's nothing like we expected. We see machines that we've already seen before and seem very familiar. Cobalion seems to be trapped in some sort of energy field. A scientist is at work at the computer, and he doesn't seem to immediately notice me because he's just talking to himself. Eventually he notices me and says that this room has its own backup generator, so the power outage is not going to affect his project, and he hasn't gotten this far to be stopped by some low-life mafia. He knows that we're here to just steal Cobalion and says that we're short-sighted. You see, Cobalion has to be used as a weapon to unlock its full potential, and in order to do so, he's of course going to fuse it with humans. So the project that was supposedly cut down is still on its legs and running here in this gym. But head scientist Byro has enough of my presence and attacks me. And with a weak-ass team consisting of Grimer, Porygon2, Kadabra, and Ditto, what did you expect? I wiped the floor with this guy. He goes into a mental breakdown and says that he won't let all of this work be for nothing. So he has the brilliant idea of combining himself with Cobalion. But before we can, we knock him out and go up to the terminal ourselves. There seems to be an option to instantly catch Cobalion, but before we can click on that, the gym leader comes up to us and is like, "No way, Jose." You see, with the advancement of technology, they have been able to even control legendaries. You basically put the consciousness of a human into a Pokemon and that's it. And they will be unstoppable after they wipe out us Mafia. And after that, they can expand and wage wars against other regions. He has already wiped out most of the grunts and says that it's now my turn. And just when he's about to finish me off with his Drapion's giant claw, Takami's Magneton saves me. Even he himself is surprised to see that they're still going on with this project, but the new gym leader doesn't even recognize his face. For that disrespect, Takami decides to knock him out. And even though he swore to never leave that power plant ever again, he now realizes that he has to take down this government for the good of the region. He realizes that these 2 guys were responsible for the suffering of many people and Pokemon, so he thinks it's only fair they share the same faith. He tells me to put them in the device and combines them to become one human. I don't think there's a crueler thing than this, to be honest, but these guys really do deserve it. They start going crazy that both of their minds are combined and threaten us as well. That's when Magneton knocks them out and puts them in the nearest cage, because we can't let something like that roam free. After this, we capture Cobalion and destroy the machine so nobody can ever use it again. So we storm out of there as quick as possible before the gym explodes and meet back up at the power plant. Takami says that he wants to join Team Cipher, so we tell him the location of our hideout and tell him that we'll be there shortly as well after delivering our Cobalion to Lieutenant Chizome. But once we enter, he's explaining what happened at the scene. You see, all of them, even he himself, got defeated by that gym leader. But our best man on on the job, me, managed to complete the mission. So he tells everybody to congratulate me for my efforts, and once we deliver the Cobalion, he says he's going to deliver it to the boss and we can already go back to HQ. And Verlo says that I passed this mission by even exceeding his expectations, as I not only did most of the work but also brought in a very valuable new asset to the team. Takami has a lot of information that we can use, but this is only a small step in our path to taking down the government. He then asks me to hand over Cobalion, but we tell him that Chizome has taken it and is going to deliver it later. He gets a little agitated because he told me to deliver it personally, but he's sure he'll get it here eventually. But because of all the good work I have done so far, the boss has got a surprise for me, but first we have to go on a little mission with this other grunt named Mare. You see, he had heard that I'm one of the strongest grunts around and he needs somebody to help him by taking out an enemy team's base. The team he's talking about is Team Trouble. We read a little bit about them in the police department computer, but don't know that much about them. The only thing that we know is that they have an outpost nearby, and if we manage to conquer it, we can take it over as our own. He's not the most confident grunt, as he stutters a lot and doesn't seem to believe in himself. So we decide to help him out and head over to the base with him. On our way there, we run into some troublemakers, literally, because they're Team Trouble. They're basically like this gang of mobsters, thieves, and bikers, but me and my newly made friend take care of them quickly and reach the base. We infiltrate it together and take out all the grunts inside until we reach the commander. She has got word that she needs to watch out for a commander with cyan hair, which means she's talking about Calais. That's not us though, so she doesn't seem too scared, and so she, Team Trouble admin Maya, is about to take us on. With a weak team full of poison types, our team was basically unaffected by her. I can see why there's not much known about Team Trouble. They're just a weak bunch compared to us. Maya says that this isn't over yet, but Team Trouble is going to hand this base over to Cipher. Mare is absolutely exaggerated that we've managed to complete this mission on our own, so we call over all the grunts and Mare tells me about his story. He's never really had a friend in life except for his Skarmory, which was his first ever Pokemon and to this day his loyal companion. But now with me by his side, he's finally got the feeling that he can make more friends, and I'm glad I'm able to call him one. Hand in hand, skipping around, we go to the boss and tell him the good news, but he says it's not that big of a deal. We didn't really need that base, but I guess it doesn't hurt. He will remember this, however, and just when he's about to send us away, he hears Chizome's voice on the TV. He's announced himself as the new leader of Team Cipher and says that he's going to take over the world with the legendary Pokemon Cobalion, basically ratting us all out and stabbing our entire organization in the back. The worst thing, however, is that he made us known to the public. We were working in the shadows, and now it's all out there, so the boss tells us to go and look up where this signal came from, put a stop to Chizome's schemes before he rats out our base. We go back to the lab and meet up with Takami, who already has the location of Chizome. Apparently he's just in his apartment in Maru City. He doesn't know exactly which apartment it is, but this should be more than enough information for us to be able to find him. Me and the squad roll out because we really want to save this organization as it's our only family. We make our way to his apartment building, but it's kind of already too late because the police is in here, and if they get to Chizome and manage to detain him, he is going to crack, and that means our whole team will be in danger. Luckily, we might be able to still clear out the building before they get to him because they just started their search, but they're not leaving here without all their evidence. Luckily, me and the squad have the strength to take most of these police officers on together, and eventually we reach the top floor where Chizome is confronting a police commander. He thinks I'm here to join his side, and the police officer thinks so too because his buddies were supposed to come back him up, but we beat all of them up. Chizome, however, is just power hungry and will take out anybody that stands in his way. The police officer speaks up against him and they start a battle, but he just orders Cobalion to take out the police officers and he turns into a rock smash rock. That's me for real. But now it's my turn to be turned into a rock smashing rock that you should smash, just like that subscribe button. He's basically stopped caring about the team or our leader and just wants to start it all on his own. But in order to do that, he's going to have to wipe us out. But this man seriously thinks he can beat me without Cobalion, and that was his first mistake. I mean, he does have a pretty decent team of electric types, starting out with a Jolteon that gets bug bitten, a Keychain and Anglerfish that got digged, and finally a Knight in shining armor that got defeated by its worst enemy, magnets. This drives the man crazy as he screams out that this was not supposed to happen. I didn't even take losing into consideration, but it doesn't matter, I still have Cobalion. He said that I could have been a great admin in his new team, but unfortunately, my time has run out, and just when he is about to order Cobalion to attack me, DiMaria's Mawile jumps in and bites in his hand. We make sure to stall him a little bit before our very own boss can walk him and put him in his place. He says that he put the entire organization in jeopardy just because he wanted to do something selfish. He can't even control this Cobalion because he's not strong enough. You see, he hasn't even captured Cobalion yet, he's just keeping it trapped in this energy field. The boss has clearly had enough of him and asks me to decide on what to do with him. We can either execute him and turn him into a rock smash rock, or take him into custody. And to be honest, I think I'd rather take this guy into custody because some of his information that he has might come in handy. He respects my decision and honestly would have probably rather executed him, but I feel like he does something even more cruel. He says, "Do Pokeballs work on people?" and then just lobs a ball at him and it captures him, trapped for eternity, just like the Pokemon he used against us. And being able to put people inside Pokeballs? That's an insane discovery. We might use this in the future. We end up capturing Cobalion and the boss tells me to get as far away from this place as possible and then head back to HQ because the police is going to be storming this place. So I get my squad out safe and sound and try to be as discreet as possible when heading back to HQ. Upon entering, one of the grunts tells us to go to the assembly hall because the boss has a big announcement. He says that the government tried to stop us, but it was all in vain because now we have a legendary and it's all because of these three grunts in front of you people. Mare and Dear Maria get an astounding amount of applause and a big congratulations from the big boss, but I have proven myself time and time again. So the boss thinks it's time for a promotion as I become a lieutenant in front of all my peers. With this example, the boss says everybody now knows that if they work hard enough, they might be able to achieve this as well. Believe me people, this team is going places. After our coronation, the boss calls us over because he needs to discuss some things with me back in his office, so we better not let him wait. After arriving, he briefs us because we honestly don't know a lot about this organization other than taking down the government. And while yes, that may be the main goal, but once this goal is achieved, you actually need to control the people after the government is gone. You need to show the people something to look up to, something that they can't screw with, and that's what they're creating right now, a weapon of destruction. And Cobalion is just a tiny piece in creating this. We will need many more legendaries in the future if we want to complete our goal. And this goal is creating the perfect weapon called ZRF. A legendary of their own, an artificial Pokemon that is only powered by other legendaries. Luckily for us, it's not a Pokemon with free will, so it won't turn into another Mewtwo experiment. And just when the boss is about to give us our new mission, they get a phone call from another branch saying that that guy that beat me up at the beginning, that little kid, is now at our other base beating up our grunts. So the boss orders me and Khaled to go and deal with the situation. But there's one more thing, because the boss knows that the professor of this region is up to something, and that's when we cut to his lab. You see, Kian, the trainer that we fought, seems to be taking on the gyms very rapidly and is ready for any obstacle that gets thrown in his way. And they're talking about some kind of operation, and are even saying that our team is nothing but a stumble in the road for them, even though we've captured a legendary. They also seem to have a girl on their side, but according to the main man here, all things will go according to plan. Our mission now is to go and deliver Cobalion to Minerva, which is another admin at our other outpost. Kale will go first, however, to check if everything is in order and safe, and then we come after to deliver the legendary. Just before leaving the base, our friends ask us for any kind of information, but obviously we're loyal to the boss, and until they make lieutenant themselves, we can't tell them anything. So we cut our way through some tears, hike our way through a desert, and ride a newly evolved elephant to Hasashi City, where you can get some cheap choice items, which is always nice. We make a quick stop at the bike shop as well, who is being ran by Team Trouble. And these guys haven't forgotten my face. You see, normally bikes here cost around 1,000 Pokédollars, but he wants to sell me one for 30k. So I decide to steal it from them because we can't show weakness. Of course, he's not too happy with that, so we do what we do best, defeat him in more battles. We get our bike, leave the shop, and go to the HQ, but just outside we meet up with the girl we were warned about. about, Mavis. She's been beating up grunts left and right and says that it's my turn now. But she doesn't know I've been promoted to lieutenant as she sends out her frogadier against my LGM. I quickly swap it the grub guy to spark it, then Magneton takes out Lycanroc with Mirror Shot, and our big ass elephant deals with Absol and Comfey. She's pleasantly surprised that we managed to beat her, but still says that one day she'll beat the Elite Four and even Champion. Until then, she's going to try and grind in this cave. Luckily, there's not much to see here, so we get her out as fast as possible before our admin breaks a hole in the wall and lets us enter our secret base. Apparently, the kid we've been looking for was already gone. Before we link up with Minerva, we can check out the base. There's a cafeteria here, as well as a lab/sleeping quarters area. Besides that, not much to see. So we go downstairs and give Minerva our Cobalion so that she can combine it with the ZRF Pokemon. She's incredibly pleased and says that this might bring out a new era for our team, but if we really want to succeed, we're going to have to get her more legendary Pokemon, and that's going to be our next quest as well. Kale, however, doesn't think Minerva is being fair. This mission is way too hard for us alone. So he tells me to meet up with him at the cafeteria, where he explains to me that Minerva always looks down on everybody and she only cares about completing the ZRF, no matter what the cost. So in order to help us out a bit, he might have a location where a legendary Pokemon is residing. A haunted mansion somewhere not too far from here. So he gives me the coordinates, we split up and meet back up over there. He doesn't think I can survive this place alone, so we'll be investigating it together. But upon entering, we see that Team Neo Galactic is here as well, because they got a strange radio wave coming from here, which confirms our suspicions of there being a legendary Pokemon around even more. And this is actually the same Galactic Grunt we helped out on one of our first missions. However, he doesn't seem to be as friendly anymore and calls out our entire team for being low-life scum, and tells us to leave and let the professionals be at work. Well, I guess he needs a reality check, because we're the professionals here. We're going to find this legendary Pokemon and capture it before they can. So we take all of them out one by one throughout the mansion as they split up their manpower to search for that legendary Pokemon. But on our way through the mansion, we don't only encounter Team Galactic Grunts, there's also ghosts that we need to defeat. And once they're done for, their spirits can get laid to rest. I think there was between 6 and 8 ghosts that I had to find, and once that happened, a secret alleyway would open up into the basement of the mansion. But unfortunately, Team Neo Galactic has already found their way here before us. There's no sign of a legendary Pokemon down here, and because of that, they blame us. And so they attack me and Kale in a double battle. I wouldn't really call this a boss battle. The only 2 threats on their team were Porygon 2 and Weavile, but once defeated, they leave with their tail between their legs. But we have to inform our boss that Team Neo Galactic might not be on our side anymore and that we have to watch out for them. Kale leaves as well, and just when we try to leave too, everything starts to become very dark and the room fills with this eerie atmosphere. That's when the mythical Pokemon Darkrai shows up. Not a legendary, but still something with a lot of power behind it. So we end up defeating it in a battle and capturing it for Minerva. And we meet back up outside with Kale, who asks me where we went because we disappeared out of nowhere. After trying to explain what happened with Darkrai, he is extremely happy that we can give this Pokemon to Minerva, but he also spots a Salamence just outside of the mansion that could come in handy as it's such a strong pseudo-legendary Pokemon. So we make our way over to it, but it turns out to be an illusion made by a Haunter. Unfortunate, no pseudo-legendary for us today. But it's not a steel, electric, or psychic type anyway, so do we even want the dragon? No. But something even more important happens. We see a kid walk by in the distance, and Kale seems to recognize him as the champion of Hoenn Brendan. But the weird thing is that he still looks like a 10-year-old kid, while in reality he used to look like that years ago. And he took down the evil teams Aqua and Magma, which means he might be coming after us next, so we have to inform the boss and Minerva of this. So we travel back to the base and tell Minerva the good news about Darkrai first before giving her the bad news. She seems to be delighted and puts Darkrai in the same machine as she put Cobalion in. This powers up our big boy ZRF, but even with these 2 powerful Pokemon, it still isn't enough to fully power him to 100%. Minerva is filled with euphoria, but unfortunately we're going to have have to ruin her day by telling her that we saw Brendan around and our entire operation could be in danger. Because she's an executive and both our leaders, she tells us to go and report this back to the boss as fast as possible because otherwise, we don't know what's going to happen. She's going to stay behind with the project because it's her life's work and she wants to protect it with all of her might. Once we're back at HQ, our two friends greet us and they ask how we're doing and what kind of missions we've been on, but obviously that's all classified. And if they can't get any information out of me, they at least want a battle. And I just want to say that they're both absolute weaklings. If they want to make it in Team Cipher, they're going to have to step up their game. Dismissed. Let's head to the boss. Calais has already informed him about our mission at the mansion and about what Minerva's been doing. He thinks that the feud with Team Galactic can turn into an all-out war, so we might have to strike first before they do. But enough about that, because we have to tell him that we saw the Hoenn champion. Once he hears this news, he's pretty shocked because Brendan left his position as champion a long time ago and now works for the Moss Deep Space Center. But he might have been hired by the police or is just investigating something on his own around here. So we'll certainly have to be on high alert from this moment on. This still doesn't explain why he's 10 years old still, but the boss thinks it has something to do with Professor Large. So we're going to have to split up in teams. Calais is going to investigate Team Galactic and see what they're up to, and once he leaves, the boss wants to tell me the story about the professor. 17 years ago, the region was plagued by terrorist attacks, which took both of the boss's parents. Shortly after, Champion Magnus called a secret meeting involving the most prominent minds from all over the Fabel region, because he knew that if the situation didn't change, he would be voted off. They came up with many ideas, but only one struck the champion's eye, and that was the mind-controlling machine, suggested by none other than the traitor himself, the professor. The boss here used to be the owner of Cipher Incorporated, which is one of the most wealthy companies of that time, and he decided to fund the entire project, all to try and get revenge for his parents' death and bring justice to all of those who did them wrong. So years passed as they experimented on Pokemon, trying to enter their brain space so that they could control them, but nothing worked. It was too much of an enigma for them, at least for the available technology they had at the time. So Large came up with another proposal. They shouldn't be controlling Pokemon, they should just use brainwaves to try and control people's minds. And that's when they came to the radio wave signal that Team Rocket used at the radio tower so many years ago in Johto. Back then it was used to evolve Pokemon and create the Red Gyarados, but we might be able to turn this into a mind-controlling beam. Unfortunately, almost all the test results came back negative once the project started rolling. Eventually, however, with more testing and more money being pumped into the project, they finally had their first successful human test subject. So with this amazing news, they went to the champion and told him that they were ready to take out the leader of the gang that had been causing the terrorist attacks. So they gave in the name of this leader into the machine, and unfortunately it malfunctioned and took out one of the scientists that was working on it. They had done many tests where this hadn't failed prior to the first one, but he thinks that Professor Large sabotaged it all. After witnessing this failure, the champion shut the project down, but as the boss walked outside, he overheard Magnus talking on the phone saying that the plans for this machine could be useful and that they can stop the terrorist attacks now, meaning that he was behind everything from the start. He couldn't believe he helped out the man that caused the death of his parents, and from that moment on he went rogue and knew that this corrupt government had to be taken down as fast as possible. And that's the story of how Team Cipher came to be. So with all these children now on the move, the boss thinks that Large is probably controlling them with some kind of mind control beam and is making sure all the evil organizations won't stand in the way of the government. And that's why we need to go and infiltrate Large's lab to find out more about what's going on. And that's going to be my next mission. So we make a quick pit stop at Takami to pick up a device that can shut down security systems for us and hit the road straight after. His lab is located in Glimmerview Town, and after we arrive there, we first make a quick stop at Kian's house. His mother says that he's always been a quiet kid with only one friend, the girl next door, Mavis, so we don't really learn too much about him. However, since we're still a crook, we steal some of his stuff and try to enter the lab, but the entrance is closed, so we check out some of the nearby houses and found a weird bookcase with a secret passage behind it in somebody's basement. He isn't too happy that we found this out, so after beating him up in a battle, we see that this is an entire secured area with lights everywhere, and once you get spotted by those, you get sent back to the entrance. There's cameras, there's statues that basically work as security guards. If you run in one of these, you have to battle them, and if you lose, you get sent back to the beginning. Weird thing is, these statues use shadow Pokemon, so the professor might have been messing with some experiments on those too. And honestly, I could rant about this place for ages because I was stuck in this puzzle thing. This entire area is just puzzles and parkours for over an hour. There is no need for this to be in a Pokemon game, but I guess it's still kinda cool. Then once you actually arrive in his lab, there's a ton of assistants there to guard it, and they run around and spin around, and if you enter their field of view, you get sent back to the beginning of the lab as well. So yeah, I hate this place. With an hour and a half of my life wasted on puzzles I didn't even really want to solve, I finally got to the end of the lab. We look around the lab and don't really find anything interesting at first, but once we find something of interest, we hear footsteps coming to the door. So we hide behind a machine and we see that the professor as well as the old champion walk in to debate about something. They're waiting on a third person, but he seems to be running late. So they start talking about how they can take out our little team, and they've already devised a plan for it, but before they start talking about it, the champion Alatus walks in. He doesn't seem to know why he's here, and that's when they tell him they might have a system that will keep the region at peace, and it's called Uto Police. They're basically robotic police officers that are designed by the brilliant minds of this laboratory. They're infused with very high intelligence and AI that was taken from the best Pokemon battlers around the world. But the champion here doesn't seem to agree because he thinks these robots can go haywire and that will just cause a problem to spiral out even more. On top of this, he also doesn't really trust the professor at all, and in a couple of months the reform will happen and then he will throw these two guys off the board. The champion doesn't want to waste any time, so he leaves, and they say that this is just a temporary setback. They start rambling on about nothing and eventually get a call from the police that everybody needs to evacuate the building because somebody has breached in, which is us. As we try to get out of the building ourselves as well, we see that it's flooded with police officers and we need to make sure that they don't spot us, because if they do, we might be heading for some jail time. So like Ezio Auditore, I sneak past them as a real assassin, and once I'm safely behind cover, I call up the boss and say that the champion has nothing to do with Magnus and Large, but those two are in fact working together. They were, however, talking about something that was called Operation Red, and that's when we hear sirens coming from the boss's phone as he screams through the phone that our base is under attack by the police. So I should try to flank them and break into the HQ myself as well, so I can take as many out as possible and maybe still save our operation. Upon heading over there, we see that they've already captured tons of our grunts, so we try to free them by defeating the police officers, and once we get inside, we see that there's an all-out war. Every grunt is fighting a police officer. This might turn out very ugly. Eventually, we make our way into the hideout, and once we enter, we get attacked by dozens of policemen. With plot armor by our side, however, we defeat them and eventually run into an ambush. They catch me 2-on-1, but even that is not enough to take out my overpowered team, and they run away like little babies after they witness my power. We eventually reach the meeting area where we see two of our squad members fighting off the police, but Di Maria fell and they're trying to take her out of here to go into custody. And in that moment, Mare tells me to take on the police officers before they can do so. So me and Mare battle together, fighting off waves of police officers until they eventually leave the building or are knocked out. Unfortunately, Di Maria is unconscious, so we can't get her out of here, and the door is blocked off by our very own gate, which has been hacked by the police, so we can't even get it open, which means we're either stuck here or we have to find a way out of this place. But if we don't, we'll get captured for sure. So Mare starts carrying Di Maria on his back and throws out his Skarmory and orders it to drill a hole through the wall with its steel wings. Once the hole was made, we walked through, but the wall collapsed and Skarmory didn't survive as he lost his best friend. The Pokemon that's been by his side for the longest of time is gone. But we have no time to mourn him right now because we have to check up on Takami and the boss to see if they're alright. We arrive at the lab first and save Takami as he's being ambushed by multiple police officers. Unfortunately, it only gets worse from here as the police get to the unlocking system of our jail cells and they let out that abomination of the fused scientist and gym leader as well as the former lieutenant, Chizome, and they're out for revenge. The abomination has now named themselves Bushido, and they don't really have a plan considering they were in jail this whole time. They just want revenge on me, that's all. However, Chizome does remember that I tried to save his life by locking him up instead, and for that he wants to aid me one last time in this battle against Bushido. His help is obviously very much appreciated as we take down their Muck, Alakazam, Drigalgi, Toxtricity, Drapion, and Porygon Z. After the battle, Bushido starts going crazy, but Chizome jumps in by saying that he will help them out and get them on the right path, because revenge is not what they should be seeking right now. And so he thanks me one last time for saving his life, and then they leave the base. But then we get word that the police commander Rekul has somehow overpowered Kale and stolen his access card to the boss's office. So we go to floor 3 to confront him, but he seems to just be stalling for time. He only has one Pokemon with him, a Toxicroak, which we obviously make quick work of, but you just have to check out how muscly this guy looks. He's definitely a police officer I wouldn't mess with. Once he's taken out, however, we can finally check up with the boss and see if everything's okay. But I do have to mention this, my Varoom evolved into Revavroom, and this thing has the best animation I've ever seen of a sprite. Oh lord, what I would give for Game Freak to give us another 2D Pokemon game. But that's off topic, because the boss is in big trouble as the office is overwhelmed with police officers. All of our members have their hands full, and I'm the only one that can try to save them. So I take care of the 3 officers blocking the way, but it's already too late. We need to evacuate as many people as possible, but then the rest of the backup arrives. And even though they're running short on commanders and more police officers, they've got reinforcements around the corner, and once those get here, we are finally done. And that's when the main police commander shows his true colors. It's actually Looker from the NYPD, and he's been on our tail this entire time. He says that we're all under arrest, and while his officers deal with my superiors, he's going to try and take care of me. So let's show Looker that even he can push down our morals. His team consisted of a Toxicroak, Ambipom, Houndstone, and finally the kryptonite to my entire team, a beautiful looking blue Mega Arcanine. I hope this thing becomes reality once Legend ZA drops. But in order to take it down, I had to use some real scumbag moves, and that was use revives until he finally ran out of Flare Blitz so that I could easily take him out afterwards. Our crew defeats their police officers as well, but it's too late. The reinforcements have arrived and we have nowhere to go. Luckily, Takami and Kale jump in front of the police officers and hold them back with their electric type Pokemon, giving us enough time to escape through a back door. Their sacrifice will surely not be in vain. They might get arrested, but I'm sure we'll find a way to bust them out of jail once we get to the end of this tunnel. As we're walking through the tunnel, many conversations go through our heads as the morale keeps on dropping and dropping. Everybody thinks we're failures, but luckily there is light at the end of the tunnel, and once we get out, we realize that we can't give up just yet. But first things first, we blow up this entrance so the police can't get through anymore. So we all group up back together at the lab, and we find out that Di Maria is fine. She's resting up in the medical facility, and we can visit her anytime. Let's be honest, things can only get better from here on, so we better get started. We go up to Minerva and ask what the situation is. It's not looking too good because 2,403 of our members were captured. Currently, we've hit rock bottom, and honestly, we have no idea how we're going to get back from this. But then, all of a sudden, a blue glow comes from the machine behind us. It's ZRF. It's actually alive. This event might be able to turn the tide for us forever. It's now at 80% and rising, and once it hits 100, we can actually use it. Unfortunately, that's when a power outage happens and the project's efficiency starts lowering. They turn on the backup generator as fast as possible, but we've lost a good amount of power, as it dropped down to 66% fighting efficiency. For some reason, our unlock just doesn't stop. Like, we get hit after hit after hit, but we keep getting up, because now our goal is going to be to get this thing back up and operational. Unfortunately, all of our bank accounts have been frozen by the government, which means there is only one more thing that can save us. You see, Lucia, another executive and the right-hand girl of the boss, comes from a samurai clan, a very wealthy one at that. Unfortunately, she ran away a long time ago, and she's kind of been an outcast from the family ever since. But it's our only option. We have to go back and redeem her honor, just like Zuko did in Avatar: The Last Airbender. We're not going to let her go alone, however, because she's going to need some backup. And for that, for our courage, for our demonstration of power, time and time again, the boss finally upgrades my rank to an admin, giving me a cool set of new clothes and even more power within the organization. He also wants to promote Mare to lieutenant, but he declines until Di Maria makes a full recovery so that they can make lieutenant together. A noble mindset that the boss fully understands, but now we have to go and join with Lucia. On our way over there, we get sidetracked by a marsh tomp in a swamp, and I'm not gonna lie, I really wanted to capture this guy, but he's not part of the types we can use, so I had to let go of my favorite Pokemon. While we were getting closer to the town, we had to enter a very sacred cave, and we got into some trouble with Team Trouble. Lucia wasn't too pleased about this and told them to leave these sacred grounds, and she isn't just going to arrest them, no, she told her Lurantis to take care of them. And that's Team Trouble gone. But honestly, if there's more grunts in the area, we might run into even more problems. We ran into many kimono girls who are the guardians of Henko City, which is a beautiful little place with rose petals flying through the air at every moment, just like you're in the middle of a Japanese garden. Eventually we run into Lucia, who's already here. She welcomes us to her town and wants to bring me to her childhood home, but on the way there we hear an old man being harassed by some Team Trouble members, saying that this is their territory now. This gets Lucia even more mad. So we chase him out of town, but they say that this won't be the last we see of Team Trouble. We make sure Mr. Ryota is alright and then head to her home. She's incredibly stressed to face her father and tells herself to breathe in and breathe out before going up to him. He immediately scolds at her, saying that she's a dog that's just returning to his owner. She apologizes for leaving the clan, but it's not enough for her father. He notices me and asks if she's finally sold herself off to a wealthy family, because then he can finally be proud again. Obviously, that's not the case. I'm just one of her co-workers. He keeps scolding at her, but then I finally jump in and say, "Hey, treat her with respect." And just when he's about to have me executed, another guy with red hair walks in. It's Lucia's brother, Shuzen. He's so happy to see his sister again after all these years and says that he and his father have actually missed her, which the father obviously denies. So we strike a deal. We take care of Team Trouble and they will help us in our pursuit of more funds. But there's some more unfortunate news. Team Trouble hasn't only been raiding the surrounding area, they also stole a necklace of the mother of Lucia, who passed away a long time ago. It's a family heirloom and they really want it back as fast as possible, and no matter what the cost. So we'll go after it, and we'll start by heading outside and talking to all the townspeople to see if we can find any clues. Apparently they always keep on attacking the village from the north side, which means their hideout must be located somewhere over there. So me and Lucia throw everything aside and tell the guards to leave us alone while we investigate the area. This area is basically just playing hide and seek with thugs. You have to find and defeat 6 thugs around the area, and then you can proceed to the next one to search for the hideout. There is a maze of trees covering the tracks of one last grunt, but eventually we do run into him and corner him. We ask him why they've been terrorizing the roads in the city and where their hideout is, but he doesn't want to speak, so we instead battle him and knock all the information out of him by slapping him around with our powerful beasts. He finally speaks up after being threatened by Lucia Lucia, and their hideout is actually south of the city on Route 23, which is really weird because they say the attacks keep coming from the north. There's something suspicious going on here, and we have to find out what. So we go back to Lucia's father to fill him in with all the information we have. Unfortunately, the father doesn't seem very happy about this. We haven't defeated the raiders, we haven't gotten the necklace back, and he was about to cut off our mission if her brother didn't jump in and tell her father that she needs just one more chance to defeat Team Trouble. Eventually, the father finally complies, and we get our final chance at defeating them. Lucia, however, thinks she owes me an explanation for all of this, so she tells me to meet up at the clan garden. This is a place where she can easily clear her head and talk about her past. It's also a really beautiful and calm area, if I may say so myself. So she was a second-born child as well as a daughter, which means she doesn't have a lot of options in the clan life. The only option was basically marrying her off to a wealthy family, which she didn't want to do. Thankfully, her brother Shuzen was always there for her, but there was only so much he could do before they turned him into the next clan head, because he had to go through a lot of training. But she needed someone that could take care of her all the time. Somebody she could really love and trust. And one day they were doing their ceremonial dance in the town square when a girl walked up and started staring at her with this gaze that was unbreakable. They started staring into each other's souls, and from that moment on, she knew she just fell in love. They showed each other the most beautiful places, the places where her mother used to take her. They shared stories, dreams, and aspirations as if they've known each other for their entire lives. But unfortunately, a couple days later, her father called her in and shares the bad news. She had been sold off to another family. That day, she ran off, but she told Minerva where she was going, and so they were about to run away forever. But there were spies from her father among them as well, and they jumped them just before they could leave. That's when the clan leader ordered to execute Minerva and take her back home. But that's not what happened, because Verlo was there right at the very moment they were about to strike, and he saved her and Minerva. And that's how she ended up with Team Cipher, and she will be by Verlo's side until the very end, until she has repaid her debt. With that tragic backstory out of the way, however, we have to go and find that hideout. However, the next round is once again filled with stupid puzzles that nobody wants to solve. You have to go get a pink energy thing, a blue energy thing, and put them in a triangle thing. Boom, you clear out the way. Eventually though, we reach a house with an underground basement in it that's way too big for my liking, so this must be the hideout they've been talking about. Unfortunately, the door to the secure area downstairs is locked by a big gate, and you need a code in order to unlock it. So we talk to some grunts, and after beating them up, they say that we need 4 numbers. So we go around beating up grunts until we get all 4 of them, open the gate, and head downstairs to talk to their big boss. He actually thought that Team Cipher was finally done for and that they could take the region for their own. They just settled into this hideout and we're already here to kick them out. He's not taking that. However, Lucia still needs some answers. How do you keep attacking from the north when your base is in the south? And the answer to that is this Pokemon, as he throws out a Celebi. They managed to capture the Celebi by stealing the amulet of her mother, which is a crucial part in summoning the time-traveling fairy. They've been using its powers to teleport around, while all the while staying hidden from the authorities, so we're going to have to take it back and bring it to the family, or maybe bring it to Minerva to add it to the legendary total. So I'm going to try to keep this guy busy with a Pokemon battle, and if I manage to knock Celebi out, Lucia is going to nab it right in front of his eyes. Team Trouble really is weak. He only has Eradicate, Tentacruel, Crobat, and then of course Celebi, but normally he wouldn't have that. None of those Pokemon could really touch mine, and Celebi is not that strong of a mythical, so we overpowered that too. After the battle, the boss decides to show his love for Lucia for some reason, and then smoke screens away when she gets too close with coughing. Even though he managed to escape, Team Trouble shouldn't be harassing this area anymore since they don't have Celebi, so we head back to Daddy and tell him the good news. He's delighted. That's honestly all he wanted to hear. He finally sees that she's the daughter he always wanted to have. He tells her to go and deliver the necklace back to her mother's grave where it belongs, and after that, they can all celebrate. So we do her the honors by following her back to the shrine and lay the pendant inside. She says some beautiful words to her mother about how she changed, and that hopefully from somewhere her mother sees how strong she's really become. She still misses her every day, and after saying her final goodbyes and prayers, we decide to head back to the palace, but we get ambushed by some of the royal guards who say that her father hasn't changed one bit and wants her back home immediately and do not return to Team Cipher, and they want me out of the way as well. Unfortunately, they don't operate in Pokemon battles, so they strike the Pokeballs out of my hand, and just when they're about to make me a piece of meat, Shuzen stops the strike and is like,
Guys, we can't be doing this no more.
he decides to strike them both out because he's no longer on his father's side. He wants to help out his sister for once and make sure this stupid legacy ends as we get escorted back to the palace by his side. We all step up to him in a straight line to show that we mean business. He isn't too happy about this because he now realizes that both of his children are failures. But in order to make it in this world, you need to have power. And that's something he thinks his kids just don't possess, hence why he double-crossed his own daughter. And it was easy for him. He didn't even skip a heartbeat when he was offered a precious deal. And that's when we all get confused. What kind of deal is he talking about? Well, you know all of those Team Trouble attacks? Well, he teamed up with them, and it's basically all his fault. All of this was basically an ambush as we're suddenly surrounded by Team Trouble grunts. The trade is basically this: the boss of Team Trouble wants his daughter, and in exchange for that, the clan gets all the power of Team Trouble by their side. He's basically left all of his own morals behind, as well as the wishes of his own children, just to gain power. And this man needs to be stopped. Lucia speaks out in anger as she charges at her dad. We are right behind her, ready to assist her in this battle. It definitely wasn't an easy one, as his Gallade, Mienshao, Golisopod, and eventually Mega Aggron put in a great fight against us. But this man does not know of the power of revives and full restores that we grunts like to use a lot. And so eventually even his massive wall of an Aggron fell to my Magnezone's balls of electricity. The father doesn't accept defeat, however, as he says that his own daughter can't try and ascend the throne like this. But that's not what she wants at all. She just doesn't want to live this life anymore, as she cuts down her own father right in front of me to put an end to all this family drama. And unfortunately for us, Team Trouble flees the scene before we can get any more information out of them. However, this does mean that her brother can take the throne and restore the family's honor. He will in fact fund everything we need, and after displaying our gratitude and saying goodbye, we head back to the boss and Minerva to tell them the good news. But we give them the greatest news last, and that is that we've captured Celebi. They're over the moon after hearing this, and immediately put her into the machine. And after plopping it in, ZRF starts powering up, and unfortunately we can't see it in action, as this is the end of Beta 3.